Don't come to speak on this bill, although I certainly appreciate the remarks of my colleague from North Carolina relative to the alternative. I also see the chairman is here, and I don't know if I'm only prepared to speak, Mr. Chairman, on a separate subject, probably 5 to 7 minutes time. Mr. President, as I said, I appreciate the comments of my colleague, and particularly the need when we're dealing with veterans and their benefits and their health care in particular, to be very careful in terms of what we're doing so that we do it in the right way, because we do owe them all our nation's gratitude for the sacrifices that they have made. As a former veteran myself, I have some appreciation of that, and daughter is married into a military family. Nevertheless, we need to be very, very careful how we go forward in making sure that the care they get through the VA system is the very best care possible. And my colleague has outlined a number of issues that do need to be debated, and I dearly hope that the Majority Leader will allow us the opportunity to not only debate but vote on an alternative which, in my opinion, addresses the issue in the very best way. But today I come to talk about the President's visit to Minnesota. I wish it were Indiana. He had to fly over Indiana probably to get there. But he's going there for the purpose, as stated, to discuss a new initiative. I think it's a transportation initiative that he hopes will create jobs and stimulate economic growth. Clearly, that's been an ongoing challenge for this administration. But how ironic to go to Minnesota, a state like my home state of Indiana that's been had one of the most negatively impacted taxes imposed upon one of its most dynamic job creators, the medical device industry. How ironic that you go to talk about creating jobs and economic growth at the same time a provision that was incorporated in the so-called Affordable Care Act, imposed an egregious excise tax on not the profits, but on the sales receipts of medical device companies, simply as a pay-for the Obamacare Act. As I said, Indiana and Minnesota are home to many of the country's largest medical device manufacturers. In fact, my state of Indiana exported more than $9.7 billion in life science products, including medical devices, and is second in the country, only to California, in terms of exports of life science products. So it's very important to our state. And we have over 300 FDA-registered medical device manufacturers, some of them large, some of them small. They employ 20,000 Hoosiers directly, with an indirect support by nearly 30,000 more. So it's not a small thing for our state. It's one of the, and pardon the pun, cutting-edge industries, producing devices that improve the health of Americans and extend the life of Americans through some remarkable innovation. These companies have revolutionized the medical field with life-enhancing as well as life-saving technology. And so, what is the effect of this excise tax that has been imposed on these companies and this thriving industry? Well, let me respond in a way that reflects what some of the Hoosiers have told me as I've traveled across the state, talking to these device employees and CEOs, manufacturers, learning what the impact of this tax is on their industry, which is so important to our economic growth and I think our country's economic growth. One device manufacturer located in Warsaw, Indiana, develops and sells orthopedic implants for children, but recently had to shelve 2 important projects simply because they had to get the money to pay the tax and they couldn't put it into the research, development, and innovation of this next product. And I quote an employee of this company, who told my office, and I quote, "The medical device excise tax has inhibited us from developing more products that can reduce a wheelchair-bound child's discomfort or that can allow a kid to walk for the first time." So they had real consequences here. Companies that are many innovative, struggling to design that new product that can be life-enhancing and life-saving, have simply had to defer their product simply to pay the tax. They may not have made a penny in net profits. Many of these are startup companies hoping to develop and get FDA approval for the next new innovation, the next new life-enhancing innovation. And yet they're taxed not on their net profits, or many losing money initially in order to go through the tortuous and time-consuming process of getting FDA approval, but which denies them getting their products out to the market for a long period of time. So most of them early on are not making any profit. But the devices that they are selling, all are, and every dollar that comes in support of this is taxed, even though they have no net profits. And therefore, they have to take money out of research and development, out of capital equipment, out of employee compensation in order to send the check to the government. Now, Cook Medical, which is located in Bloomington, Indiana, another Hoosier device manufacturer, was forced to table plans for a major expansion because of the device tax. In testimony before the Senate Budget Committee last year, Cook's medical chairman, Steve Ferguson, said this: Cook has made the difficult decision that without repeal of the medical device tax, we will move important new product lines outside of the U.S. Our previous plans were to open up 5 new manufacturing facilities in American towns. These are now on hold as we use capital intended for these projects to pay for the excise tax. There are very real consequences here in terms of job creation and economic growth that are being inhibited, and we're getting just the opposite. We're getting job killing and deflated economic results as a result of this tax. And it's an egregious tax. Now, the Advanced Medical Technology Association recently conducted a survey of its members. They shared that with me earlier today and found that the device tax forced manufacturers to let go of or avoid hiring 33,000 workers last year. 33,000 people that could have joined the workforce at wages which are, in my state, 56% higher than the average state wage. So these are good-paying jobs. They require good skills, but they're good-paying jobs, and it is an emerging product, series of products that can be exported around the world. The survey also found that 1/3 of the respondents had reduced their research, had to reduce their research and development as a result of the medical device tax. And in terms of investment dollars, 3/4 of the respondents said they had taken one or more of the following actions in response to the tax. They have either deferred or canceled capital investments, deferred or canceled plans to open new facilities, reduced investment in startup companies, found it more difficult to raise capital, particularly among startup companies, and reduced or deferred increases in employee compensation. There are real results, negative results, that come from taxing anything. But when you tax sales, when you tax on an excise basis, it has a compounding effect for particularly startup companies and even for established companies in terms of what they're able to do in terms of hiring, in terms of plant expansion, in terms of research and develop, in terms of innovation. This is happening across the country. We just happen to be 2 states, Minnesota and Indiana, that have been particularly hard hit here. We ought to be encouraging these companies to continue their research and development. We shouldn't be punishing them with an egregious tax, which is simply a byproduct, a way that the administration said we have to find a pay for Obamacare. And here's a prospering industry, so let's take some money from them, not on their profits, but let's just take money from them from their sales and excise tax so that we can apply it to Obamacare. That's like, essentially what they're doing is they're taking money from program that works and puts people back to work and generates taxes on the right way, and transferring that money to a program that is in distress, works, has turned out to be a job killer, according to studies and a number of agencies that have looked at this, and is very much in a state of confusion and disarray right now among the American people. So you take some money from something that works and you give it to something that doesn't work. What kind of rationale is that? And how can the president go to Minnesota and say, I'm here to stimulate growth and create jobs, while his very own policy has done just the opposite? Now, the senior senator from Minnesota, Senator Klobuchar, and I chair the Senate Medical Technology Caucus. And we have been able to pull together a bipartisan effort to increase awareness of these unique issues, but also to achieve a vote, which is hard to do around here, to get a vote on something. But during the budget, we have this so-called vote-a-rama. We get to offer any amendment that we want. It's not binding law, but it sets the stage and shows you where the Senate is on particular topics. On this one, 79 out of 100 United States senators, Republicans and Democrats, that's 45 Republicans and 34 Democrats, voted for repeal of this tax. 79. So this isn't a Republican standing here challenging the president of another party or members of across the aisle and saying, we're asking you to support this Republican issue. This is a bipartisan issue. Almost as many Democrats as Republicans support this. But yet the majority leader has refused to allow this to come to an actual vote, which would put it into passage, because the House has already supported and passed this and being sent to the president for his signature. So I guess what I'm asking here today is that the majority leader at least allow us the opportunity to go forward with a vote which would then, should it pass, and since 79 voted for it in a bipartisan way, I suspect that it would pass, and be able to send it to the president. If he really wants to create jobs and stimulate the economy, we have living proof of something that will do it. So I don't know how the president today can go to a state and say, I'm here to stimulate the economy and provide for new jobs, and at the same time have in place and not support, and a majority leader who won't allow us a vote on it, something that does exactly what not only the president wants to do, but what we all want to do. We all want to enact measures here that will get our country growing again, and will get people back to work. And particularly in an area where we're providing life-enhancing and life-saving medical technology, it's particularly important. So my plea, Madam President, as I finish here, I urge the majority leader and I urge the president, if they're serious about encouraging economic growth, spurring job creation, and improving health care, to support the repeal of this unfair and destructive tax on medical devices. Madam President, I yield the floor.
Madam President.
Senator from Delaware.